Welcome back to another episode of the Corey Story, where we jump in talking to athletes and entrepreneurs on what they did with their money, how they invested their money, how they spent their money, the silly things, the good things, the bad things, and just hearing all the stories about it, of how they ended up where they are. We'll hear the good, the bad, and so that way we can all learn from this, right? That's the whole point. Anyways, I have Jamie Cudmore, who I spoke with last year, and it's an absolute awesome interview. He just how he speaks about where his career was, how much money he made at different stages of his career, which was shocking to me. How he built a successful wine business, was in the club business, was in the bar business. And anyways, I hope you enjoy it. And if you do, share it with someone you like, just so hopefully they can get something out of it as well. Jamie Cudmore, welcome to the Corey Story. This is very, very cool.
Hi, Corey. Thank you very much for having me on.
So those of you who don't know who Jamie Cudmore is, Jamie is probably the bad boy of Canadian rugby. But at the same time, his nickname is Cuddles. Like, how crazy is that? That's such a... So Jamie, so you know, to give you a bit of backstory, had just under 20 years professional career in professional rugby. He played overseas in Europe. He played for Team Canada in 4 World Cups. That's absolutely insane. That's a huge career and a huge accomplishment. Yeah, how did it all start? Let's start there.
Thanks again, Corey, for having me. But yeah, it all started way back in the early '90s on the west coast of Canada, where I grew up. I grew up in a little town called Squamish, which back then was kind of a bad word. Nobody really liked Squamish. It was kind of a mill town, not much going on, but it was kind of the last stopover on your way to Whistler. These days, I think there's quite a few people that want to move and live there, as it's deemed the outdoor capital of the West Coast. But yeah, that's where it all started. I was actually logging at the time, and I knew about rugby. My father immigrated from England back in the '70s, and we always wanted myself and my brothers to be able to play the game, but there was just no organized rugby possible in Squamish in those days. There was, skiing up in Whistler, or, hockey, basketball, kind of, the typical sports that you would see. There wasn't even any footballs, soccer, basketball, volleyball at school. And when I started logging at around 14, 15, my boss at the time, he said, listen, I hear you and your line mate, you guys have been maybe getting in a bit of trouble on the weekends. How about you come play rugby? All that kind of extra stuff. You won't get in trouble with us. We promote that stuff, like fights and all the rest of it. So anyway, I tried it out, and I really, really enjoyed it. I love the camaraderie. I love the contact. I love the kind of the nonstop nature of the game. And yeah, I was hooked. So I'm into it. Played a few more years in Squamish, and then ended up kind of starting my journey, moving down to Vancouver and playing for the Capilano RFC, which is my club still to this day. And that's how everything really got going.
That's amazing. Yeah, and that's what I want to get into, like how it started out, and you ended up with such a great career, and you're at the pinnacle of rugby as much as it is. So when you started playing, like when it comes to the Corey Story, we get into the money, and it's kind of guiding people in the right direction, athletes, of what they do with their money when they make it at all levels, right? Because when it comes to rugby, I used to be a jockey. I still play rugby now, and they're very tough sports. And at a professional level, like, what's the average career of a professional rugby player?
Professional rugby player, I'd say you're doing pretty well if you get kind of 6 to 8 years. Most guys, you look at like a typical European professional or Southern Hemisphere professional, they'll be coming through a kind of an academy cult setup around 18, 19, 20. A few guys will move on to the fully professional side at, 20, if they're really good, and or maybe get a few kicks at the can. But, kind of 23, 24, 25, that's when, they'll get into their career, they'll really start playing regularly, and then into their kind of late 20s, if they're doing well, if they're consistent, they don't have any injuries, and yeah, so kind of a that kind of 10-year block of kind of early 20s to early 30s is, but to be able to, to play for even 10 years, let alone, almost 20 like myself, you need a lot of luck. You need a hell of a lot of work ethic, and you need to pay attention to the details because, you know, at that level, if you don't pay attention to the details, you don't work harder than the next guy. Well, you'll quickly get overtaken. You'll quickly find yourself on the sidelines or on the bench, and nobody likes that as an athlete, as a player. You want to be in the
So
game.
worst thing ever. I
Yeah,
remember fighting for positions against my best friends in rugby, and it's not a fun thing.
no.
So, well, do you mind if we talk about like money? You'd have a good idea of what different levels of rugby players make. So, starting out like in Canada, where would we start when you started making some sort of money that you could live off of?
So in Canada, it's completely amateur. So there's no professional rugby per se in Canada. There's a few semi-pro setups that have started, notably the Vancouver Highlanders, which will pay guys $2,500 a month to play in kind of an invitational league. They're looking to build a national competition. We're actually, myself and the Arrows, we're a part of this, trying to rebuild a national competition. But yeah, there's not much money yet. So you have that entity, which is very recent. Previous to that, it was completely amateur. You'd get maybe a few clubs helping guys with flights, or maybe, clubs will always help you find a house, find work, but there won't be any type of money per se, unless you go to, say, to New Zealand, Australia, France, where I was for many years, and you get a professional contract.
Okay, that's pretty brutal, but I guess it's very similar to a lot of sports. Like hockey, as you go through the levels, you're not really making money till you get to the higher levels. Yeah, so let's talk about France. Tell us about France. You played there. Give us a quick story on that.
Yeah. So, well, just previous to that, as I said, I moved to Vancouver, moving from Squamish to play at better level. I ended up moving down to New Zealand to again play another level and kind of, you know, earn my stripes, as it were. And then had an opportunity coming back to Canada the year after that to go and play professionally in Wales. And that was my first kind of welcome to professional rugby. I signed with the team, the Scarlets, on the west coast of Wales, and they are one of the most storied clubs in the world. They beat the All Blacks in the past. They've had numerous Welsh international players come through their ranks. And I walked into their change room that day, and it was basically you had multiple Welsh internationals, Irish internationals, a few Tongans. It was like a who's who of rugby,
That must have
and
been pretty wild.
it was amazing. It was like, you imagine like a young hockey kid walking into like the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Montreal Canadiens dressing room, fresh off the boat, basically, as I was,
Yeah.
and I was pretty overwhelmed. But I was just happy to be getting paid to do what I love to do, and that's kind of where it all started.
It probably helped that you were probably the biggest guy in the room though, right?
Well, at that level, I wasn't the biggest anymore. There's plenty of other big guys.
To give you a bit of so when I first met Jamie, I saw him across the field and I thought it was Lou Ferrigno for a second. Like he's just a monster. How tall are you, man? How tall are you?
Oh, I'm not that tall anymore. I'm old, so I'm about 6'4" now. I'm the
Six
smallest of
four
my two
and
brothers.
yeah, and just built like a monster. Still, I don't know how old you are now, but it's quite amazing.
I'm 45, but I stay active. I stay in the gym because I think if I don't, as you get older, all the different, bumps and bruises and operations and everything that I've had, I'll be in much worse shape if I don't go to the gym than if
Yeah,
I do.
it sucks as we get older. We got to keep doing
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
All motion is lotion, but brother, you got to keep it moving.
So sorry, so France, so sorry, Wales, is this where your income increased?
Well, marginally. I think I was making about $50 a month, but I had
Crazy.
pounds. But then my housing was paid for. I had a car, so I didn't really have any. I didn't have any bills.
Yeah, right.
So pounds a month is actually in Wales is actually quite a bit.
Okay.
I would probably spend 200-300 pounds a month on food, which is like these days is unheard of.
Yeah.
And, and then so I had a good chunk of change to kind of just leave in the bank. I wasn't thinking about kind of any type of long-term investments at that time, but it was just nice to be able to get paid for what I did and not really have to do anything else, which was pretty novel concept for me at that time.
Well, it gave you a chance to really concentrate on rugby then, right? Like you didn't have to wash dishes and then run to the rugby field, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You wake up every morning, you're at the gym, and then you're out on the field, and then you get fed right after. And man, our day would start kind of 6 and we'd be done by 3 o'clock. So it was for me, it was gravy. I was loving it. I was loving it. And things
I
didn't
guess so. You're
really.
living your dream and you're
Yeah,
making a bit of money, right?
that's
So
it.
it's yeah. So where did you go from there?
So that was when I was fortunate enough that summer, the summer previous, to get my first international cap with Canada, and then moving into the professional ranks internationally. And then that following year, 2000, it was the World Cup in Australia in 2000, as I said. So I was selected for that squad. So that was my first World Cup opportunity. And unfortunately, that year, the end of that season, the Welsh Union turned into regions. So as opposed to having professional teams dotted along the southern coast of Wales in the different cities, so Cardiff, Bridgend, Llanelli, Swansea, they amalgamated those professional teams into stronger regions. And their big goal was to get obviously Welsh qualified players. And I wasn't that. I was a Canadian international. So my coach was actually really good to me. He said, listen, like, I'll happily sign you back for next year, but you're not going to play much. You're always going to get overtaken by a Welsh guy. So if you have an opportunity to go somewhere else, by all means, go for it. So World Cup '03 down in Australia, and speaking with other players on the team who were already professional. Mike James being one of them, is a good friend of mine, and he had already been in France, I think, about 5 or 6 years previously. And he said, "Listen, I'll hook you up with an agent, and let's see who's out there." And I got picked up by Grenoble like a week later. And then back in those days, nobody had smartphones or anything, so I knew I was going to France, but I didn't really know where.
Right.
And off I went.
That's amazing. And so now this is where it kind of picks up
This is where
when
it
it comes
picked up.
financial wise. Like nothing's to me much greater than playing for Canada Rugby. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
But
that was amazing.
so sorry, what was their World Cup pay?
I think we got about $300-400 a week. So
That's
it paid for your coffees
wow.
while we were down there on the World Cup. Um, and yeah, it was no, there wasn't much to it. There wasn't much to it at all.
That's just crazy. You wouldn't think it was like that. You wouldn't think.
Well, as Canadian rugby being amateur, there was no money in it, but other countries get a lot. Like French team, English team. I think the English guys get 25,000 pounds per game.
Okay.
So it's like over
Okay,
50.
that gives a bit of context. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So moving to France after the World Cup, I was on a 2-year contract. I'm starting to make some good money, and now things are really cooking with gas. I'm really starting to enjoy myself.
And so when you were doing that and now money is starting to come in, where's your mindset at? And I think a big part of this we've talked before. I think Jennifer is a big part of this conversation, correct?
Definitely.
So Jennifer is your wife and she went to school for
She's a business major, business in Canada. Worked in different business structures throughout Eastern Canada, and then when we met, she was actually moving to Grenoble to go to business school to do an executive MBA program there. And I thought, well, this is great. I've got this beautiful lady on the hook, and she's moving to Grenoble, a place where I had lived previously.
Right. And so we spoke a bit there. Tell me where it went from there. Like when we start talking about what used, where was your mindset at once money started to come in? And now this is what happens with like all entrepreneurs, all athletes, maybe someone you never grew up with money in Squamish, right? I never grew up with money. And then all of a sudden, you're getting 10 times more than you ever thought of. Where was your mind at that point?
Well, my mind at that time, I was a young 20-something boy who was, I had disposable income. I didn't have to pay for anything. I was playing rugby, and then at that time we had 10 days off for Christmas, so I'd be flying home to Canada and partying with my buddies. So I was living the high life as a young professional athlete, basically.
Which is kind of what you're supposed to do a little bit. Yeah.
I think you do need to enjoy
As
yourself.
a rugby player, you kind of have to live the role a little bit, don't you?
In my early 20s, I agree. I had a lot of fun. I think if I had started, building things and buying commercial property or residential property at that time, I'd be in a slightly different space than I am now. But at the end of the day, I think those life lessons and the fun as well is definitely worth it.
What would you say is like the silliest thing you did with money back then?
Oh, geez, I think there was a friend of mine was having a stag weekend in Calgary. I played a Friday night game. I flew out Saturday morning to Calgary, got there with the time change in the afternoon, partied for 48 hours with the boys, not nonstop, like just have some beers and a few nice restaurants, and then flew back on the Monday morning and got there for Tuesday training because we had a long weekend that weekend. So it all worked out. So I basically did like 24 hours of flying for 48 hours of partying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was.
That's, yeah. But it's like you can do it and it doesn't really make a dent in your income. It's like, yeah, I can afford this, right?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that was a long week after that, I tell you.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, yeah, so stuff starts to happen and you're living life and you're spending money. And now, when did a sort of light bulb go off when you're like, okay, maybe I should do something with this?
So that was when. So I signed 2 years in Grenoble. At the end of that contract, I was speaking with a few different clubs, one in England, Leicester Tigers, and then a few other clubs in France, notably Paris and Clermont-Ferrand. I had visited Clermont. They had great infrastructure, very, very solid club. They're backed by the Michelin tire company. That's where Clermont is where Michelin started. So basically, you have the stadium and you have the original factory right across the street. So I was very impressed with kind of their plan for the future, their infrastructure, and they were offering a very good contract as well. And I felt that I hadn't really given France a chance. I didn't speak the language fluently yet, and I was really enjoying this new culture and learning the language and everything. I thought, you know what, I'll give it another go. And yeah, next thing you know, it was 11 years later, I was leaving Clermont. So that was kind of the biggest part of my career was my time in Clermont.
And so when it came to you and Jennifer, you guys started to get businesses started, correct?
Yeah. So long story short, we came together in Clermont in 2000, and is when we decided to first off to not only build a house, but at that time I had a nightclub. I was partners in a nightclub sports bar with some friends of mine, and so that was us. My wife and I trying to build a family. Our daughter was born in 2000. So 2008, we're in the process of running a sports bar nightclub, myself playing professionally, my wife finishing her MBA while being 7, 8 months pregnant. She went up to Oxford Business School, the Syed Business School, as an 8-month pregnant mother. I think she was the only one there that couldn't have a beer after class.
Oh, that's
So
intense.
we kind of went from 0 to 100 real quick.
Well, and that's actually something that I want to dive into is when you're in that sort of mode and you have all that going on, like how, as an athlete, do you think, did you balance it well? Like, because as a professional athlete, we are meant to be focused on the job at hand and whatever owners we play for or ride for or whatever it is, we don't want them thinking otherwise, right? You don't want Austin Matthews thinking he's thinking about his 20 unit apartment building and how it's losing money, right? Like that word gets out and it's trouble. So how did you like balance all that and stay focused?
So the nightclub piece was pretty easy. We had good people who worked there. I had one of my partners was he was he was an accountant, so he kept things very tight, and we checked on things every Monday. We go through the video and make sure people aren't stealing booze. I had very good staff.
Did that happen? That happens in every bar, doesn't it?
Of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, and I actually brought some things in from Canada with like the girls were using booze to sauce up the patrons, and I said, no, girls, you just buy a couple of bottles from the grocery store because they're like a bottle of booze in the grocery
Yeah.
store is like 10 euros,
Yeah.
and then we sell the bottle for 80-90 euros in the nightclub. And I'm like, no, just buy a couple at the grocery store before your shift. I'll pay for it, and then you can just you can sauce people up.
Right.
But at the beginning, they didn't understand that. But yeah, no, we managed it quite well. I think the biggest issue for us was, once we started building the house, and with my daughter being born, it was just there was a lot on the go, and I built the house myself. I didn't use an architect or a general contractor. I bought the plans from an architect, and then got the person that I bought the land off. He did the excavation, and then I just got trades as they were needed to build the house.
So I saw a video. This the house with the bear on the balcony. Is that the house?
That's
Yeah,
it.
that's a beautiful house. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we did a full concrete structure on the hill overlooking the Massif Central in southern France. Yeah, it was a beautiful spot. But yeah, like you said, it was with a nightclub, and then with the family growing and the house, it was a little bit too much.
Right. So you had other businesses. Well, when did they come?
Yeah, so those the other businesses came out of my wife's volition. Really, she one of her projects at school was a wine label, which we ended up launching in geez, remembering here now, probably 2014, I think. If the years are all mixing up, but
Is this Sin Bin wine?
yeah. So we started the Sinbin wines, and we kind of did it as a joke, like kind of a play on, play on words with my kind of my history in the rugby. Like Sinbin, the yellow card for me and a bear wrestling, and then the red card, me, I've knocked the bear out, so he's out cold, and that was for the red wine. But it worked. It went really well. Geez, I think we sold 40,000 bottles the first year, so it took off.
Sorry,
I've
you
never,
mind me asking, but like,
yeah,
how did you start in the wine business? How did you start it as a joke?
yeah. So sorry, I missed that part. So my wife had this business plan that she had put together as part of her MBA. And when our daughter was born, I guess about 6-7 months later, she said, "Oh, you know what? I want to get back into doing something." She's an entrepreneur, so she wanted to get something on the go. And she said, "Oh, I have this business plan with the wine. Like, let's go down to the bottom of the hill at the local Cave Cooperative, which
Because
is
you're
like,
in France, of
yeah."
course. Right.
And
Yes.
and I already had a relationship with these guys because they were sponsors of the club. And I went and spoke with the director there, and I said, "Oh, listen, Eric, what do you think? We do the mix, we do the labels. you guys do the bottling, and then you box it all up, and we'll take it off your hands." And he loved it. He loved the idea. So
What sort
that
of
was
like initial overhead did you have for that?
so we were initially, I think we are at about 80, 85 cents a bottle, and then we'd sell them for six for the red and four for the white.
Like at the end of the day, it was a good venture.
Oh yes, very, very.
That's amazing.
We got into we were in the hotel chains up in Paris and Amsterdam, hundreds of restaurants through through the Auvergne region where we lived. I had partners in Lyon and Paris at different bistros and cafes. It seemed to a point where every time I went to training, I would put probably 10 to 15 cases of wine in the back of my truck. And after training, I'd be dropping wine off on my
I
own.
want to actually, I want to talk about the truck. I love the truck. Actually, we can go into that right now, just quickly.
All right.
So my favorite thing, what I say is the reasoning of starting this podcast is athletes, when they start making money, they go get the nice car, they go get the nice watch instead of buying assets. And we've all made this mistake. And then you told me this story, and it's had me like, oh, there's another way to do this, right? It's another way to teach this. So do you mind telling the G-Wagon story?
Yeah. So, well, I had a truck. I had a Land Rover. So brand new, all blacked out, big tires. Like, I'm a Squamish boy, so we like the big redneck trucks. But my wife is a little bit more refined, and she loves the G wagon, and she just loves because it's a solid piece of equipment. But the great thing about the G wagon is that its dimensions of the trunk are just a bit larger than a pallet of wine. So we could cover that under the business as a commercial vehicle. So everything was completely written off through the business because we could just say it's our wine delivery truck. And she had it customized with the big rims and the matte white paint and a whole 9 yards. She went full go. But that's the piece. Yes, you want the big shiny toys, but make them work for you.
Exactly. So you use this in your business, you use it as a write-off. And at the end of the day, do you mind saying like how much it was and how much you ended up selling the truck? And
Yeah. So we bought it for 85,000 euros. I bought it off the owner of the local Mercedes dealership, who was a friend of mine. And so it's a G, so it's a six banger. It's not one of those big V8 ones because I can't deal with going to the gas station every 3 days. But
no,
but it was perfect. It was perfect for us, and it was. So where were we going with?
just where you started with it, you paid like, cause everybody wants a G-Wagon, but then you leveraged it, which
Yes.
it,
So we had it for, I think, about 5 years, and ended up selling it for 75. So like 5 years, $1,000 a year, like it was no brainer.
exactly. Like I just, ever since you've told me that it's like, oh, okay, there's smart ways of doing things and better ways of doing things. Like, don't just get the car to get the car, leverage it while you have a business. Another shout out you said earlier, someone who's helped you along the way, and I'm sure he helped you in this situation, was your accountant.
Yep.
And
Well, at that time it was my wife. My wife
oh,
is it's all her. It's all her. She's done the MBA. She understands the creative accounting, as we like to call it,
yeah, yeah.
to make sure that we're only paying what we really should pay.
So I have a good question about that right now. Is if someone were to start going down that route, and I'm trying to learn more myself, just like as an entrepreneur and that creative financing, like where would we go to learn this? Or what would be the best way, the quickest way to wrap our minds around all of this?
The quickest way, I think, I would imagine it'd be at school or somebody that has those qualifications already. My wife has that through her
Because she
school.
went to school for it, right? So
Yeah,
it's like you have certain athletes that are not going to go to school for a business major necessarily, right? Who they I guess a chartered accountant could help you in that aspect, right? One that could work with you.
It's got to be somebody that you trust, because I've seen plenty of different stories where guys they getting fleeced because percentage points or whatever it is aren't being properly tabulated. So
And
somebody who's
that's
trustful.
a tough thing because we don't know. We just wanna ride races. We just wanna play rugby. We just wanna right? And it's you hire that person so you don't have to think about that. But then you hear these stories all the time, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, when as soon as money's involved, that's where all the devils come out. You know what I mean? Like serpents or whatever you want to call them. There's it's a complicated thing, but I mean, I think if you look at, like, if you have people in your family, or somebody who's already in that field, whether it's accounting, whether it's business management, or just somebody who's been, say, an entrepreneur for a long period of time, they'll have a good understanding of those things. Those are probably go to those people first, as opposed to going somebody you don't know.
Yeah, we've said that before on this show is like look to the people that are doing well and the people that you respect. Not necessarily the crazy people partying every weekend and not doing things properly, but see the people that you feel that are professional and follow the way that they go and see what people they use.
That's it.
I think that would be the best way to go, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
Perfect. Any other businesses?
Yeah, so we had the wine label and the nightclub, and then moving out of the nightclub, we still wanted to stay kind of in wine, so we ran a different concept. It was a thing called Vino Mania, which was bag and box wine, which in France is a hard sell, but we created like basically a wine bar. So there's the bag and boxes are kind of properly set away, and you can get Bordeaux, or sorry, Chateau quality wine for a lot cheaper. And what the concept was, we had a truck that would go around to the different and load up the wine and put it directly into the bag and box. So there's no oxygen touching the wine, which is when the wine starts to go off. So we had a really good concept with that. And again, it ran for quite a while and things were very, very good. But again, then we had another kid and things just got too busy again.
Right. So that's a lot of stuff. That's very sorry. Um, what would you say so you had a lot of learning experiences. You dove into a few things. You were in deep and playing professional rugby and getting all this business knowledge. So you picked up a lot. What were your favorite learning moments, would you say?
Um, there was like learning moments every day, through the nightclub process and then into the wine. The wine piece was one which is it's really difficult because you have a product that might not be liked by everybody. So, you can have great marketing, you can have a cool label, but ultimately, if people don't like the wine, wow, kind of screwed. So that was a tough piece for us because obviously we had made the mix that we liked. And then when other people didn't like it, I was kind of like, oh, well, like, what do you mean you don't like it?
Yeah.
But people have their own personal preferences, which is perfectly fine. But it was maybe a little shock to the ego that not everybody liked it.
That would be right. It's like you think you made the best thing ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because naturally you're proud of it because you built it. But as you know, not every it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea or
No.
glass.
How would you if you had to do it again, which ones like would you have doubled down on one of them? You have not maybe done one of them? Would you have picked up something else? Would you have gotten real estate?
I think on the back end of the nightclub, I would have got into commercial real estate because I'm not too sure the rules here in Canada, but I know in France they're very advantageous to the owner. People come in if they need to do any type of renovations or anything, it's on the new. So it's basically like you own the walls, and whoever wants to come in and rent those walls, well, they got to do everything. So it's very like hands off, and I would have definitely gone into more commercial real estate.
And what sort of advice would you give like a younger athlete, a newer athlete, and any athlete, like maybe in the middle of their career right now, and money's coming in and they need to hear from someone experienced,
Yeah,
like one of the toughest rugby players of all time, but you were lucky to have a career as long as you did, correct?
yeah. Oh, very very lucky.
And it's not always like that. And how many rugby players have you seen make bank and then get hurt a couple of years later and then they're out?
I've seen so many, and then various issues, whether it's injuries, whether it's addiction, pharmaceuticals, alcohol. Like it's a slippery slope, and especially when you got a bit of money, it can go away real quick. Money's very hard to earn. It's but it's very easy to get rid of.
It is. Yeah. Cause
So
you realize how easy it is, like when you said partying and flying to all those places, right?
yeah, yeah.
So, what sort of advice would you give these younger athletes? And I think we need to be realistic in the sense of they need to enjoy their time
For sure.
in the limelight and there's a party aspect to it and they need to enjoy their life. But if have you spoken to younger athletes recently about this and kind of guided them at all?
I've given a few people some advice over the years. The biggest thing for me these days, I would say, buy land, buy land, buy land, buy land. And if you can't buy land, buy houses that you can retap in areas that are most likely going to, to to be built up. And even if they're not, you still got land. You can farm on land, you can build houses, you can sell it, whatever it is that you want to do. If you've got good arable land, I think you're always going to be you're always going to be okay in the future.
That's cool. What about Jamie Cudmore and Jennifer now? What are your future plans now? Do you have anything happening here?
So we're here in Toronto. I'm currently trying to do a pivot with the Arrows Academy. Unfortunately, the Arrows are no more, and it was devastating to lose our owner and friend Bill Webb back at the end of the summer. That was a huge blow to the greater rugby community in North America, and obviously his family, more importantly. So, reeling from that, and then not able to continue on with the club was a huge setback, and hurt a lot of people because a lot of people worked extremely hard to try to keep it going. And now trying to kind of regather what we can and hopefully be a bit of a phoenix out of the ashes of all that, and continue on the great work that the academy has put in place, and continues some good competition pathways for the athletes here in Southern Ontario.
Yeah, it's been awesome meeting you, and the stories are just I love the stories, and hopefully we can hook up again. I thank you for being here. I thank you for your time, and yeah, let's do it again.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Corey. I was happy to be on, and it was great to share an afternoon with you.
Thanks, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Cheers.